Shut your ass! You will not laugh. You will not
cry.
You will
learn by the numbers. I will teach you.
Suck it up.
Good evening, friends. It's Friday, which means it's time once again for another enlightening episode of Hobbservations on Roads to Liberty, part of the Think Liberty Network. That's think-liberty.com for all of your freedom posting needs. Think-liberty.com. Also go to Roads, 2, liberty.com to buy some of our merch, our swag. Get yourself some freedom swag. Like the Boogaloo Girl, or our socialism is the ideology of grifters and shitheads, or whatever the shirt says that we've got. Go buy us some stuff, because if we make over $500 in the fiscal year, Ben has to file taxes, and annoying Ben is its own reward. Tonight is a very special night, because we are talking to, you might not know how to pronounce it, I certainly didn't before tonight, it's Chitin Defense. Kyle from Chitin Defense. Sir, how are you doing this evening?
Doing fantastic, my man. How are you doing this evening?
Oh, never been better, because you, when I found, actually, I was given your name, or your company's name, by Dan Haga. I wanted to get him on. He politely declined, but he sent me your name and a few others. And when I jumped on there and started scrolling through your posts, I was like, what is this? Why have I never heard of this before? This is literally one of the things that I think is one of the most interesting, or some of the most interesting guns out there. I am, of course, talking about the Helical feed PP-19 Bison submachine gun. There we go. Look at that sexy thing. Yes.
And in case y'all were worried that it's airsoft, the only thing that I can really do is show you the feed column here, the follower,
there it is,
and the fact that it's a big honking bolt.
Yeah, there we go. So yeah, the PP-19 Byzon, if you guys were watching right there, not just listening on the podcasting app, is a 9mm. Actually, it comes in 3 that I'm aware of. It comes in 9x18 Makarov, 9x19 Parabellum, and what I find really sexy is the 7.62x25 Tokarev. I'm assuming that's the 9x19 version, right?
So you're close. There's actually 4 different versions. There is the 9x18 Makarov, which is what the Russians originally designed it in.
Yep.
9x19 Parabellum or Luger, which was meant to be an export version. 380, there was a version that was made in 9x17 Kurs. And then there's also the 7.62x25 Tokarev.
Nice. Yeah, I wasn't aware of the 380 version. That's interesting. I'm sure it probably wasn't that big of a stretch for them to figure that out. But the Byzon it's got a helical feed system.
That's correct.
Not very many guns out there use that system. Some people will claim for a reason it has a kind of a spotty reputation for reliability, but it does allow you to have a ludicrous amount of ammunition on tap. If I'm not mistaken, the 9x18 version is a 64 round helical magazine, correct?
That is correct. The 9x18. I'm trying to get this magazine open for you so I can show you the internals of it really quick. But the 9x18 and the 9x17 will hold 64 rounds. And the 9x19 and the 7.62x25 Tokarev will hold 53.
Yeah, so quite a bit more than your typical stick mag, and that comes kind of comes at the cost of bulk and complexity. But at the same time, it's 53 to 64 rounds without some obnoxious drum hanging off the bottom end of it.
Exactly. Now you can really see in the profile of the weapon itself, it doesn't really stick out too much more than a really thick handguard there.
Yeah.
As far as your folding stocks, just like most of the PP-19 Byzon is really taken from the AK-100 design. A lot of people know the AK-100 and AK-74M by their smooth top covers. As you can see there are no ribs. But some of the finer details of the upgrades include a 1.25 millimeter receiver, which is a little bit thicker than the standard 1mm receiver. You also have a more robust optics mounting rail inside there, which this uses a slightly modified AK100 optics mounting rail. It also has a 5.5mm folding stock trunnion, rear trunnion. Interestingly, though, some of y'all may be familiar with the latch system on the front of the AK. That's a part of the trunnion and the receiver on the front side. That's not the case on the Bison. I don't have an original stock with me, as this one's technically just a pistol. But there's a little lip on the barrel pin, or I'm sorry, the barrel locking pin here, that you can kind of see an indent there. Maybe not. That the stock you can actually lift it up, and there's a little hinge that locks into that channel there.
So I'm going to assume that the 1.25mm receiver thickness, which is right in between the standard AK's 1mm and the RPK's 1.5mm. I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that reinforcement was done because a typical blowback operated submachine gun, kind of counterintuitively compared to a piston operated assault rifle, it puts a lot more stress for the same reason that a 9mm AR submachine gun has to use stainless steel trigger pins because they have a tendency to break their trigger and hammer axis pins. Am I on the right track with that, or is there some other reason that they went with the 1.25?
So I'm not actually 100% sure. As we all know, the AKM series, which uses, I believe the 1mm receivers, is pretty robust. I know that it was for the AK100 series itself was in 5.56, 7.62 by 39, as well as 5.45 by 39. I think that they did it just to add some longevity to the platform itself. I think that that's just a carryover from the materials they had on hand when they were designing this. Not a lot of people know it, but there was a big lawsuit between Calico and Izhmash because of this design for the magazine. When the Soviet Union dissolved, I believe that was in the late 90s, early 2000s, that kind of got dropped because Russia was, I guess, in turmoil at that point, and there was no point in pursuing it because they stopped making the Bison. And that was because they came out with its little brother, the Vtis SN. I really think that the 1.25mm receiver lends itself well to a blowback platform. But I can't 100% attest to whether the 1.25mm was chosen due to the more violent action of a blowback.
Okay. So one of the things about the successor to that, the Vtis, is that it's not built on a straight AK receiver. It does have a significantly shorter receiver. Is that the same case with the Byzon, or is it a standard AK receiver?
Absolutely, it is the case. So the receiver is shortened by, I want to say, approximately an inch. There's also on the Byzon the fact that, or the aspect that you're basically missing the front quarter of your receiver there, and that's just to act as a relief so your magazine can be more in line. Because this feed column, as you can see on the magazine there, is pretty short.
Right. Yeah. You mentioned the Calico, and that's another one of those wacky weapons that not a lot of people are familiar with. If they saw it, they probably recognize it from video games or from Spaceballs. I know that the troopers, the enemy troopers, used the 22 long rifle Calicos in that movie. Kind of looks like a super soaker, but it's also a helical feed where you have your bullets in a spiral stack going down there. And I did not know about the Calico Soviet lawsuit. That's a little interesting historical tidbit there.
It's definitely a nice little nugget that I didn't learn until I was actually doing research. I contacted Calico because I was curious about the patents on the helical feed magazines, and I believe that was filed in 1990, or not 94. It was earlier than that. I can't remember the exact year. But it's definitely a little interesting tidbit that they sued essentially Russia's main firearms manufacturer for that. And I'm sure the Russians didn't give two shits. I don't know if I can curse in your show.
Go right ahead. We just let it all hang out here.
Sounds perfect to me. The Calico is actually a pretty interesting design, and I really, and not a lot of people know that it's actually roller delayed blowback like an MP5.
It is.
But I fondly remember playing 007 Agent Under Fire, and I think it was called the Calypso or something like that, which is an interesting play on the name.
Yep.
But I always thought that was cool. It was just a really interesting looking weapon, and I've always felt the same about the Byzon. I think the first time I ever was exposed to it was, I think, Battlefield 3.
See, my personal introduction to the Byzon was the original Ghost Recon on the Xbox. You had an unlockable special character, and he had an unlockable special loadout. His name, let me think if I remember it. His name was Nigel Tunney. He was a Brit. His typical loadout was a rocket launcher and an SA-80, and his special unlockable was a rocket launcher and the Byzon. And then I had to get online back in the dial-up modem days and figure out what is this thing, and that was my first introduction to it.
I fondly remember looking up cheat codes on I think it was Cheat Planet or something like that for stuff like Ghost Recon.
Yep.
No, that's interesting. It was a British character.
Yeah, it was kind of weird because you had all these different characters in that game from different nationalities, and then they would kind of like mix and match and throw different guns. And me being like, I don't know, probably 15 or 16 at that time, I'm getting online, really digging into like what is this Bison 9mm? What is a PKM? And I'm just looking all this shit up and just really dived in with both feet. And as cheesy and kind of stupid as it sounds, video games were really. I mean, I've always been interested in guns, but video games were kind of the intro to me. So wants to know how much it weighs. As my friend Gary wants to know how much it weighs fully loaded in 9x19.
So I actually haven't taken the weight, so I can't tell you. I apologize for that. I really should have all the technical information ready for you. I can tell you, it being an all steel weapon, it's already a little hefty, even unloaded. Let me do this. I can do some quick math for you. Let's go ahead and take a look at what the unloaded weight is for the Bison. And it looks like it is 4.63 pounds unloaded, and I feel like that is a crock of shit, but let's go with it.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's surprisingly light.
It doesn't have too much going on. You don't have a gas tube like a standard AK. You don't have an extra bolt component to your bolt carrier group like a standard AK. And then your rear sight base is actually a part of your front trunnion, so you're basically cutting a quarter of that out as far as mass is concerned. But I'm not 100% sure if that is accurate. Let me get that for you really quick. Let's see if I can find some place that's got something that looks a little more accurate. So I have the spec sheet here from Ishmash from back in the day. And that's where they say that it's about 5 pounds. So we'll just say 5 pounds. We'll do weight of 1.9 by 19 cartridge. 7 grams. Quick math again. 7 times 50 is 350 grams. I should have been able to do that in my head. And grams to pounds. 350 grams is 0.77 pounds. It almost adds another pound with 53 rounds there. I did 50. I'm sorry. We'll just round it to 50. Yeah. So you're looking at about 6 pounds, maybe more, a little bit more fully loaded.
Yeah. So it's not really that bad. And
yeah.
what you're getting. And what you're getting is 53 rounds in a not very bulky, very compact, relatively lightweight 9mm submachine gun.
Pretty much, and I think that heft actually really helps with recoil.
Yeah, obviously. So I was about to ask you before we went into the pre-show, and this is kind of the big question that I had when I was looking at some of the interesting things that you've got on there. Where did you get this? That's what I'm interested in.
So everybody likes to speculate. I've got people who say that, oh, I got it from like a gray market dealer. Or I got it from a deact. In all actuality, the only piece that I got from Russia was the front trunnion, the original one that I'm sure you've seen it on that page that M13 Industries had their way with, like a cheap prom night date. It didn't end well for my original trunnion, but thank God I got that thing scanned and modeled before I sent it off. The trunnion is the only thing that I had to get in. The rest of the kit, and what I can tell you is most of that kit is currently sitting with another gunsmith right now. I'd say about 90% of this weapon is from parts that I have had fabricated from my drawings. And my models. So this is, I would consider, probably the first production or pre-production version. The rest of the parts I got from a guy on AK Files, as well as some of the magazines. I originally got a 9x18 magazine from a gunbroker auction that had the rest of the kit in it. And then I got a 9x19 magazine from somebody off of AK Files that I'm pretty good friends with.
All right, so these things are floating around, because that was, I take a look at things like the VSS Vtis, the Byzon, and all these other like wacky former Soviet guns. And I have a friend up in Wisconsin who's Russian, and I'm just like, you know anything about? He was in the Russian border patrol. And I'm like, hey, what is this? What do you know about it? Did you ever see one or use one? And he's just like, he'll tell me his opinions on it. I'm just like, wow, I wonder if we could get that here. And he just kind of laughs at me. But I guess they are floating around. I don't know how they get here.
So I'm almost 100% sure that they get here by gray market or black market means. I know that there's a few other Bisons out there. One of them I'm not so sure about, and that was the one that was owned by Larry Vickers. The other one, and he sold that, I think, recently. The other one is owned by, I think it's Allie and Kaufman Arms, and his, I believe, is a legitimate one that was brought back on, I think, a Form 6. I think it's the Form 6. It's either a Form 3 or a Form 6 for the ATF when you import parts. There's not a lot of Bisons out there. They were fielded for a very short time. They had some issues with the original magazines, which these are the Gen 2 magazines with the polymer housing. The original aluminum magazines they're made of they're pretty much all aluminum. There's some steel components, but they are kind of they're more like the Helical magazines. I feel like I'm taking us into a different direction, but this is the helicoil. This is what's at the very center of the magazine for the Gen 2s. Okay. The rounds are actually pushed up this helicoil by this inner sleeve. This is the elevator. And you can see in there's a couple little fingers in there. Mm-hmm. And what happens with that is that your rounds and your helicoil is under spring tension and locks into the back of the magazine on this end.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can get that on camera. It locks into the back of the magazine there. But your cap, which has these little fingers on it as well, that index with the open spaces on your elevator, it moves freely. And it's actually got an extension spring in there that it uses for torsional force like this.
Okay.
So what happens is when this cap indexes with those little gaps in the elevator and the magazine's locked at the rear, it'll actually cause I'm trying to get a good way to show this. It'll actually cause the elevator to push the rounds up the helicoil.
Okay, so the elevator is what rotates. The helicoil stays stationary.
Correct.
And if I'm not mistaken, the Calico's the other way. The helicoil rotates.
So, sort of. On the Calico magazines and the Gen 1 Bison magazines, the helicoil is actually a part of the inner wall of your magazine housing. And then the elevator is at the center. It's these little fingers that push the rounds up that external helicoil, whereas this is an internal helicoil. So let's see. I'm going to lock this into place here. You can kind of see where that end cap will freely move. It's not under spring tension right now. You actually have to tension it before you push this back in. And then it's just a simple lock washer here that holds the end cap in place. Now I had them here, and they fell down on the floor here. I'm not going to go off camera to go diving for them, but the follower itself are just these two little aluminum bullet-looking tubes that are connected by a single wire. So it doesn't actually feed into the weapon. It's caught as it feeds up into the column here.
Yeah, kind of like the dummy cartridges in like a Beta C mag or something.
Exactly. That's exactly what it's like.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, a little bit interesting differences between the Gen 1 and the Gen 2 and the Calico mags. I can see how Calico would have sued over the Gen 1 mags, but it looks like the Gen 2 mags are different enough.
Different.
Yeah, that they wouldn't have any kind of a legal lawsuit issue with it, which is really interesting. And I'm going to assume that the reliability, the spotty reliability that Calico and the original Bison magazines have a reputation for is probably not as big of an issue with the Gen 2s, correct?
No, I don't think so. I haven't heard anything from them, and I mean honestly, I'm not the one that's offering these commercially. I'm doing a small build with some community members that want the parts, and I've put the magazine files on GrabCAD and out in the wild for free. So
there you go. A buddy of mine down here wants to know what the cyclic rate is in the 9x19. If it were a submachine gun.
I think that the 9x19 is a little faster. You've got more power behind that cartridge than the 9x18, and I believe the 9x18 has a cyclic rate of about 700 rounds per minute. I haven't clocked it because mine is a semi-auto only. But the last I heard was, and this is secondhand information, so don't take me with a grain of salt, because this is a he said, she said thing. I believe that it runs around 775 to 800 rounds per minute. Okay,
so not ludicrous. It's not like a Mac 10 or anything, but it's also not like a grease gun either.
Probably a little bit faster than a standard Uzi.
Well, that's certainly right there in that sweet spot where you want it to be. But when you're dealing with 53 to 64 rounds of ammunition, the fire rate can be a little quicker.
Yeah, you've got more than enough volume of fire going on target with that.
Yeah, definitely. So you said you're not going to be the one who's going to be commercially offering these. You threw some of the reverse engineered CAD files out there for free, which is cool. And it seems to be the online gun community seems to be the biggest bunch of bros out there. It's the 3D printing guys and everything is like, hey, I spent like 100 man hours on this design. Y'all could have it for free. Just fuck up gun control for us.
Yeah, that's part of why I put a bunch of my files out there for free. Also because I originally had that kit and I was like, I'm going to build this up and I'm going to be the only person on the block with it. I'm going to be the cool kid, the only person that has a Bison. And then I realized, where's the fun in that? What happens if this thing craps out and I'm going to have to pay $10,000 to have a single bolt machine to rebuild it? And I was like, makes more sense to share with people who love this hobby and also have an interest in weird designs like I do. It also makes sense from a logistics point is if there are more of them out there, then I'm more than likely going to have spare parts that I can use to fix mine up.
Yeah, and if there is any kind of an inherent flaw in the design that you haven't sussed out yet, or Ishmash hadn't sussed out yet, the more of them out there are, the more that more, I guess, end user beta testing there is to do.
Oh, exactly. And I mean, that's kind of what I did. There are some improvements on this that make it not quite a one-to-one true to the original design Bison. For one thing, I've greatly improved the geometry on the feed ramp as well as the bolt face to better facilitate the feeding and cycling of 9x19. And I have Dan Fisher of Halcyon Defense to thank for that. He did a lot of work to get this where it is today, and it runs like a top. I'm sure you saw my most recent video that I posted up, and doing double, triple, quadruple taps with it. It fed like a champ. I also wound up modifying the bolt a little bit so that it now uses KP9 and Vtis extractors. So you will have just a tiny bit of parts interchangeability there. I also, you can see it on this one really. I've also beefed up the front of the magazine where the hinge locking tabs are right there. Just due to the cost and the inherent complexity of getting steel inserts, I wanted to design these so you can 3D print them and then just rock and roll with it. Yeah. So the rear lug is beefed up just a little bit, and the two front hinge locking tabs are greatly beefed up there. You can kind of see on this one, which was one of my early test magazines, where that hook, the tab broke off.
Yeah.
And it was from that I decided, okay, well, this one lasted, I think it was 1,300 rounds before that happened. And that was with constant pulling it off and putting it back on. Mm-hmm. So I decided, okay, well, let me just do a little bit of stress modeling here in the software that I use, which is Fusion 360. It's free as a hobbyist, if any of you want to dabble in that. But I did a little bit of stress modeling in there, and I think I found the sweet spot for it. And it doesn't really look that much different. You'd have to really look hard up front to see a major difference, but you can kind of see on the front of the magazine itself that it's just a little chunkier.
And that little bit of chunk makes all the difference, I guess.
Yeah, whoever complained about a little more girth.
Exactly. So you mentioned modifying the bolt to accept the KP9 and Vtis extractors. What is, and that's something that I hadn't thought of, but like, what is the major differences between a Vtis and a Byzon's bolt?
So I can take it apart here really quick for you. Just like a standard AK, your top cover comes off. The next part to come out, if you would like to sing along here with me, is your
recoil spring.
Yeah, exactly. And then out comes your bolt once you push that safety down.
Yep.
So one of the things that's majorly different about the new Byzon bolt that matches up with the Vtis is that the extractor itself is a little bit longer and it has better leverage for the spring.
Okay.
In doing so, it gives you much better throw for your spent casings. And I have found that it greatly improves your basically the functionality of the weapon. This thing sends brass into orbit.
Awesome. But as far as like, is it a, I guess, kind of a side effect of the Helical magazine versus a box-fed magazine? Is the oh shit, I'm drawing a blank on the terminology, but the part that pushes the part that pushes the round out of the magazine and up the feed ramp, is that cheaper? No, on the bolt itself. That is the geometry on the underside of the bolt.
The lug?
Yeah, the feed lug. Yeah, there you go. Is that what is different between a Vtis and a Byzon that makes it so that you can't, like, say your Byzon bolt just decided to take a shit, and
you can kind of see how short that lug is there. Let me get it over to the side.
Yeah.
You see how short that is?
Mm-hmm.
It works on this one primarily due to the fact that your feed column has not too much room to play around there. I believe on a Vtis, because this is a single presentation, right? It's technically single stack, single feed. With a Vtis, it's double stack, I believe.
Double stack, double feed. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's what I was getting at there. What I was trying to get to was like say your Bison bolt took a dump on you, like broke for whatever reason, and would you be able to take a bolt out of like a KUSA KP9 and modify it in a way that it would work, rather than having to pay somebody to forge and machine you a brand new bolt?
So for those of you, there's a couple of major differences between the Vtis bolt and the Bison bolt, other than that bottom lug. But I'll tell you what, honestly, if you have a little bit of machining and welding wherewithal, you can definitely turn a Vtis or a KP9 bolt into a Byzon bolt. You can't go back is the only problem. For one thing, the Vtis has the charging handle at the very front of the bolt, and for the Byzon, it is right there at the side, and that's really has to do with the fact that if it were up front, it would be interfacing with this little tab on the top cover. I don't think that the Vtis has that. I'm trying to think that the overall profile and the external dimensions side to side on the Vtis bolt, I think, are a little thicker, if I'm not mistaken. And then that lug needs to be ground down a little bit.
Yeah,
but
I'm going to assume that the outside geometry is a little thicker as a consequence of the 1 1/4 millimeter versus the 1 millimeter receiver. Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, I think that the Vtis uses the 1.25 as well. Oh. I just believe that it's due to the differences in the guide rails in the receiver.
Okay. Cool. Awesome. So, kind of circling back to you're not going to offer these for any type of commercial sales because you're more of a reverse engineer designer, throwing your designs out there for free because F gun control. Just being a real bro on the interwebs. But you also said something you're involved in the community with some guys that might be doing like some limited term builds or whatever. So hypothetically, let's say some retard like me would be wanting to get into that little project that you have there. What kind of resources are out there for me to go about getting the parts that obviously aren't 3D printed, that have to be metal, like barrels, bolts, top covers, receivers, etc.?
So the key word in what I told you was that I personally am not going to be commercializing these.
Right. Yes.
So there is somebody else who is looking to license the design files from me, and I can't talk to them about that. They've asked for it to be very hush-hush, but we're working on it currently.
Okay, cool.
So they will be out there. They may have a few changes to the magazine. I think that I'm working on doing an M-lock handguard for them, a stick magazine adapter. Mm-hmm. But outside of that, I can't say too much.
Okay. So, but yeah, kind of going back to my question there. Let's say, like I said, I wanted to download your files that you have out there, and I wanted to put together one of my own. Like, what resources are out there for me to get the not 3D printed parts that I would be able to put my own together?
So I don't have all the files for the Bison out there. I mean, it's just to protect me, I guess, and the work that I've done. Mm-hmm. There's a lot that goes into selecting the metals used for these components, the metallurgy and the heat treatment process. And that's something that I have been working with several AK builders and a few weapon designers myself. So it's more of a safety issue that they're not out there. The magazine and the rear trunnion are two of the only components I believe that, and there's multiple components to the magazine, but they're two of the only things that I have out there.
Okay.
Just because I don't want somebody to blow off their fucking hand, right?
Yeah. And liability's a bitch.
Or get a bolt embedded in their cheek or their shoulder. It's yeah.
All right, cool.
And that's also why I personally am not going to be putting out completed weapons. These are really going to be kits for hobbyists and gunsmiths to put together. Ultimately, the workmanship on the final product is going to be up to them, right up until we make production versions with this company that I was talking about.
Awesome. I will expect to be informed when that is good to go, so that I might look into purchasing one of these once they become commercialized. Because, like I said, the Bison is one of those grail guns that you just never expected to be out in the wild in the United States, and yet here we are.
Yeah, I know, right? It was a wild ride for me. This has been a project that's been 3 years in the making. I've been working on it for a long time, and it's just really nice to start seeing some fruits of my labor, I guess. The parts are starting to roll off the mill. I've gotten some QCs on all of them, and they look great. The machinist I'm using used to work for Magpul when they were in Colorado, and he's been fantastic, especially in light of what I said my first machinist had done to me. But yeah, no, I kind of have to take a step back because there are people out there who have gotten a little impatient with the parts, but a one-man show, and I'm kind of at the mercy of my part suppliers just because I'm not doing it all in-house myself. I think I had one guy who I was trying to explain the situation. So between having the money stolen, the situation with my receiver supplier, which I'm not going to go into much detail, but I kind of got bushwhacked on that one with the final product that was delivered. And all that other stuff with my original suppliers. I lost my dad in July to COVID, and then my now ex-fiance wound up leaving me in February. So there was a period there where I was kind of dark. And I probably shouldn't have done that, but I try not to let personal stuff affect the business and Chitin Defense as a whole and as a public presentation of myself. But I believe the guy, what did he say? He said invest in rope, because the answer I gave him was not the one he wanted to hear.
Jesus. Yeah.
A little harsh, and I can get that because there's been a lot of people out there who have scammed people in this industry, right? If you're not familiar, Kalashnikov, I don't know if you remember him. He was in Las Vegas. He was going to do what was called the Vtis, which was a Vtis clone that had interchangeable mag wells for MP5 and I think Scorpion magazines. Took a bunch of money and then skipped town. You have like Spivvy Arms from Reddit who did a building service, and he cut a bunch of corners and would basically just deliver stuff that looked like it had been hammered on, literally looked like it had been hammered on. And then he wound up keeping a bunch of people's parts kits and selling them off to make money for himself. And, I'm making these as fast as I can, doing as much as I can myself to actually get the parts made. But I'm still here. You've seen my updates. If I was going to pick up and run, that the opportune time to do that was long ago. I'm here for the long haul. I will make sure that these parts get made. And I think that, not to toot my own horn, but like I said, I sold pretty much my entire firearms collection to make sure that people who did put money forward for these parts weren't left holding the bag after my first machinist fucked me over. So, I'm going the distance, and we're almost there. Finish line is right around the corner. Those parts are being made, and they're actually going to start shipping for my pre-order guys within the next couple of days. It's been a hectic week. I was supposed to go pick them up Tuesday, but I got sidetracked. And tomorrow I'll be going to pick the first 50 up.
Wow, that is. I'm glad, man. It sounds like you've had like a pretty rough year, and I think that a lesser man would probably have just thrown in the towel and like, I'm just gonna go get a 9 to 5. Fuck this. But I'm glad that you're sticking with it, because there is one thing that I think the firearms industry right now is sorely lacking, and that is diversity. You know, everybody's doing Glock shit, everybody's doing AR shit, everybody's doing 1911 shit, and what was once a passion of mine, like I would grab every gun magazine I could off of the newsstands, I'd be surfing the web looking for new and interesting things, has just got so goddamn boring over the last 5 to 10 years, where everybody's doing just a slightly different spin on the same shit. And now I think the pendulum is finally swinging back with groups, you know, guys like you and a few of the other people that I've interviewed in this space are finally just saying, you know what, we can go and we can do our own thing, and we can do something that's completely different, and it will be expensive, but there is a hungry market out there for something different.
I definitely agree with that. And, you know, it's typically safe for a company, and I'm just speaking from a perspective of an individual, right? Chitin Defense is an LLC. And even then, I'm not really exercising it as an LLC, just doing it as an individual, as far as these things go. Referring to the Bison. I think that it's safe to enter a market where the product that your product supports is popular, because that means that you likely will experience a bigger market share. And you know, it's weird, you know, looking at where the industry has gone, because everybody, you know, the people that you could really talk to as far as being a gun hobbyist were those that knew about the little niche products that you knew about that were really cool, the niche designs, and you could talk about them and geek out over them. And if you were really lucky, you'd find a parts kit or something like that. And now it's like, you know, I was looking at Recoil the other day, and they had, I think, a porn star named Bonnie Rotten on the cover, and I'm like, what? Where are we going with this whole mainstream or this mainstreamization of the firearms industry and hobby? And I get that you want to broaden your appeal, especially with the changing face of gun ownership nowadays. And I'm happy to have more people in the hobby itself. But I think that there's more people now who are in it just to have a firearm, because, you know, the AR looks cool or something like that. And then you have people who are in it because they actually have a passion for the engineering behind certain designs. They have a passion for historical designs, which, you know, I think you kind of roll. It's one of the reasons why I really like the Bison, because it takes those two. It's design-wise very interesting, but at the same time, the Byzon has some historical significance in that it was really Russia's weird entry into the subgun utilization aspect of military and police work. You know, they've had the PPSH 41 and a couple of other designs, but the Byzon, I think, was that first foray really into what would eventually become offshoot subgun designs, right? The AR9 is one that I can think of. I'm trying to think of what else. It takes a parent design and then moves it into the subgun territory based on some of the unique and I'd say positive design aspects of its parent design, which is the AK in this case.
Yeah, like the 9mm conversions for the Steyr AUG.
Yes, exactly.
Stuff like that. Yeah. You know, people will kind of, you know, poo-poo, like, why would you shoehorn a pistol caliber into a gun that's designed to fire a rifle round? You lose all that power, and you don't gain any compactness. And it's like, well, suppressors are a thing, recoil is a thing. You know, there's lots of pistol ammo is typically less expensive than rifle ammunition for training purposes, for recoil management, for suppressor use. You know, there's tons of advantages to sub-calibering an assault rifle cartridge. Not to mention, you also have the weapons handling familiarization. If you know how to use an M4, you'll know how to use an AR-9, and vice versa.
Exactly, and it makes sense. And you brought up recoil. I think one of your viewers actually asked about how the recoil is on the Bison. It's very controllable. Even like I said, quadruple tapping. I've got a target here actually from taking it to the range where I was just having fun with it.
Mm-hmm.
This was at, I think, 50 yards, but it's very controllable. I'd say for just having fun, that's not a couple of bad groupings there.
It'll definitely bounce a tin can down the range. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Time after time again. But you also get some ballistic advantages with sub-caliber weapons, which I'm not going to go into all of those, but people talk about the positives of 5.56 as a home defense weapon because of its ability to tumble and yaw and its inability to sometimes with different loads and different types of actual projectiles to penetrate barriers, walls, and things like that. Maybe that's something that you want, is for it to actually move through soft, I say soft, but soft and hard cover or concealment. Maybe you have a specific pistol cartridge load that you like to use that may be hot. Maybe it has it's a black tip like IMI used to make, or maybe it's I can't remember what it is. The Russians use a 9x19 AP round. Let's see.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's got a black tip and kind of a point on it. It's like a copper or a bimetal jacket with a tungsten penetrator and a
exactly
core. Yeah,
exactly. It's 7N31.
Yeah,
and you're right. Let's see. It says here that it's an armor-piercing cartridge that boasts considerably greater stopping power and penetration than 9x19 millimeter para and 7.62 by 25 millimeter Tokarev.
Yeah.
So the Bison, I think, would marry really well with that if we could get any.
Yeah, the government doesn't really like us to have that AP pistol ammo for whatever reason.
And I think that has to do with the quantity that you can carry on a single person, as well as the capabilities of said cartridge.
I want to blame, what was it, Lethal Weapon, when they talk about Teflon-coated cop killer bullets.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Was it Mel Gibson like shooting through the front blade of a bulldozer or something with an Uzi? And like, that's not how this works.
I love and hate Hollywood at the same time. I love how blissfully ignorant they are of actual firearms handling and safety in the case of a couple of days ago, as we saw.
Alec Baldwin. What a tool.
It was a single action army too.
Yeah, that's when I heard that he had shot 2 people on the set of a Western, I thought to myself, it had to be a shotgun. It had to be a shotgun, because there's no way this idiot would have pulled the trigger on a live gun twice. Because even an ignorant Hollywood retard knows that when your gun is shooting blanks versus when it's shooting live ammunition, because recoil happens. But I guess not. I guess here we are.
I mean, with those Hollywood types, they're either shooting blanks out of their mouth or they're shooting blanks out of a pistol, right?
Yeah.
It's almost mind-numbing how stupid some of the stuff they do or say is. But what I think really happened with Baldwin is tragic. I'm sure that he's not in a good place because of it. But as much as I may rag on him sometimes for doing weird shit, Will Smith actually has some fantastic firearms training under his belt, and he is known for being very safe with firearms on the set. And I think that especially when that's something that you utilize because there have been several actors that have been killed with blank firing firearms in the past. I believe it was Bruce Lee's son on the set of The Crow that died,
Yep,
and then James Dean also, I think, died as well, playing around with a blank firing weapon.
Yeah, well, I thought you died in a car crash, but whatever. Whatever it was, but yeah, there Will Smith, Keanu Reeves, John Bernthal. Some of these guys do, they go to like Terran Tactical and for as much a couple of about his.
Ooh, Keanu Reeves, yeah, I remember watching that video of him with working with Taran Butler, and
just straight shredding it.
Like that is the type of thing I like to see Hollywood types doing, especially when they're working with a respected industry professional, to make films that not only apply to the standard individual who can't seem to breathe through their nose, but also the people like us who actually look for those details, especially in action films where firearms are involved. And I'm not expecting everybody to nitpick the mechanics behind, fighting and being in a shootout, because let's face it, we could train all we want, but in the actual situation itself, as is proven time and time again, you are likely going to slip up or forget something, or you may do something completely antithetical to your training.
Right. Step on your own feet, shit your pants, all of the above.
Something like that. See, my first response would probably be the projectile vomit on the intruder or whatever it is to try and just dissuade them, but we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fuck, I had something I was going to say and I just completely blanked out on it. But going back to the more push towards realism in Hollywood is a good thing to see. And in order to get that realism, you do have guys like Will Smith and John Bernthal and Keanu, et cetera, that are getting live training from real trainers with real guns, so that they not only know how to look cool on screen, but they also know to respect what they are doing as they perform their craft. And I think that is it not only makes a more pleasurable experience for the viewers who actually do know something about guns, because I tell you what, man, I grew up around guns. I've been shooting guns my whole life. I was in the Army for 9 years. I cannot watch action movies or war movies without being like, grenades don't do that. That truck would be blown up. That truck wouldn't have been pierced by that round. That truck would have been pierced by that round. And it drives everybody crazy. But but having guys that know what they're doing, know what they're about, it makes for a better movie, and it makes because I think that over the last couple of years, video clips like Keanu out there just straight shredding it on Butler's range got people who may not have been interested in firearms be like, maybe there's something to this. He looks like he's having a lot of fun. I like to have fun.
Oh yeah, exactly. And we can rag on Hollywood a bunch for being weird about how they treat firearms. They use it to make money, to make action films like that. They may portray them in strange ways. And they may bash gun ownership in general when those types are out in public. But when you look at the work that they put out, I think sometimes that the cool factor of some of the guns that they use actually brings more people into the fold for gun ownership. And I think that in that aspect, it makes it more important that Hollywood at least exercise some responsibility in not only exercising gun safety on the set, but also gun safety in the work that they make.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if your craft is going to bring people into this hobby, then I think that I really do think that a lot of these actors have kind of a moral responsibility to be as accurate and as responsible as they possibly can in front of the camera, so that new people to this don't just go out there and like, oh, look at me, I'm John Wick dual wielding out on the range, and they end up like shooting their buddy off in the next bay or something like that. We're coming up on an hour right now. We got about 5 minutes left. I would like to have our viewers over here. If you have any questions, go ahead and post them up right now. There's like a 15-second delay, so they should be popping up here.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, fairly soon. A little ways back, Scuba Guy asked where he can go. Yeah, where can I go and look and drool over these?
So I have an Instagram account, and I don't have a website set up, and just because I'm lazy like that. I really should, especially if I have extra parts kits to actually sell from this run. But my Instagram is at Chitin_defense. That's CHITIN_DEFENSE. I have all my work posted up there. I have update videos that come up, and that's really where I make all my announcements. And I also shit post there as well. So go ahead, join. I'll have some more spicy memes posted up that involve the Bison. You can go back and look at my Christmas ones that compare it to the Palmetto AKV9. That was a fun one. But I've also had a lot of experience with other firearms that may be a little weird that are up there. That maybe that'll pique your interest and get you started down a road where you find another design that may be different from the Bison that you are really passionate about or you may want. I like sharing the weird stuff. But yes, I see that you put that up there, but it is at Chitin_defense. Give me a follow. I don't make anything off of it, and all my content's free.
There you go.
Like the best OnlyFans.
There you go. So kind of nice little segue sliding in there. You do have some other interesting guns that you unfortunately said you had to sell off due to some malfeasance. But there was another old Soviet design, the VSS Vtis is I know you said you had to sell all that stuff off, but is that something that you might be trying to bring?
So the VSS itself is an interesting design, and unfortunately the Malot kits and the Tula kits are two completely different monsters. I don't want to get too detailed with it, especially given the interest of time and other questions you may have. But because I don't want to step on other people's toes that are currently working on the VSS and the ASVAL, which is the assault rifle brother of the VSS, I probably won't pursue it myself, but I will contribute the work that I've already done on it to those individuals. There are some people out there who I'm not so sure of with their work on it, especially with the way that they're portraying the kit builds as like prototype versions. But I try to help out other people where they need it, and the VSS will be that. I'll help usher it to market through someone else, I think. But yes, the Malot kit doesn't use the same locking mechanism on the bolt that helps keep the original Tula military style kit quiet, but it is still quiet. But yeah, I'm not personally going to usher the VSS out there.
Well, it's good to see that at least some people are out there working on it, because that's another one of those grail guns that my Russian buddy up in Wisconsin laughs at me for, like, hoping and praying that, like, maybe the sanctions will go away, maybe they'll start importing it. It's like, no, they won't.
Probably not.
Dream on, dude. But yeah, I don't know. We're running up on an hour here, so I'll cut it short. But I don't know. I read an article on like TFB or something, probably like, I don't know, 2 years ago, that was like, this company, I forget who it was, is working on an American-made VSS. I'm just like,
Slaga Manufacturing.
Maybe, I don't know, because when I read the article, it was like, it uses a 9x39 AR-15 bolt, and it uses direct impingement, and yeah, and I'm just like, you're just.
I know what you're talking about. That was a Piedmont cartridge, and it was actually a 9x39 AR-15 that they were calling the Vtis, which is a little duplicitous, I think, but they make good product.
Yeah, it was like you're just taking an AR and putting it in a dress-up kit. Like what? No, I don't. Not like, nope, not interested. I'm not interested in an AR that looks like a Vtis. I'm not interested in an AR that shoots the Vtis cartridge. Vtis is Vtis. I want it. Yeah, sorry.
It'll be here at some point, I'm sure.
I'll probably have a few more gray hairs by then. But yeah, that about wraps it up for tonight. I see nobody else posted any questions. You fucking slackers. But thank you so much for coming out and sitting down. It's been kind of a long time in the making. But
I have to apologize for the amount of time that it's taken for me to get on your show. We had my dad's funeral and a couple of other things over the past few weekends. It's been a shit show, but I'm glad I finally made it on. You've been a pleasure as a host, and your viewers and the individuals that submitted questions have been a pleasure as well. Thank you all for having me on here and listening to me yammer on about my passions and all that good stuff.
Well, our Friday show is more laid back, and we enjoy sitting down and talking to people who have a passion in this space, and it is a passion that I share as well, which is why I like to sit down with guys like you and others in the industry and kind of get off of my own ass and do my own things as well. And you do not have to apologize for any personal family things that like this show is. I'm a nobody. I'm just some fucking guy that wants to sit down and talk to people. So do not apologize for those things that
nobody's a nobody. Don't talk about yourself like that.
Maybe I'll be somebody someday, Rock. But again, thank you so much. Ben is going to drop the feed down here in a minute, but stick around. We'll do a quick little AAR afterwards. But thank you, everybody, for showing up, submitting your questions, listening to what we had to say tonight. Thank you so much for your continued support. I'm Hobbs. That's Kyle from Chitin Defense.